they're going to look to see if you have 21 credits of WPI, ECE, grad courses, right?
Yeah.
And so what they're going to do is, whether they're double counted or taken during your MS portion, they're going to populate this and they'll say, has this individual met that requirement? Check. Okay? And the remaining 9 credits, so 9 credits, of that 9 credits, you can take up to 6 credits worth of 4,000 level courses. Right? So if you maximally double counted, that populates here, and then let's say you take one more ECE grad level course, here, check, you graduate. You don't, and the thing is, the MS degree in WPI is interesting, at least in ECE. You can either do a thesis. So thesis, just like MQP, like if any of you have done an MQP or an IQP, master's theses, they also have a course number. So they're called ECE 599. This is called thesis. You can look in the grad catalog, and that actually counts in 21 credits. So, and usually what you need to do is you need to do 3 of those 3 credit 599s to have a thesis, right? It's silly because it is a master's thesis equal to 25 hours times 3, 75 hours in an entire student's career. Master's thesis are a little, just like your MQPs, right? Are you working 25 hours per term on your MQP? Don't answer that. So what ends up happening is you can either do the thesis route. Let me tell you one thing. If you want to be funded from a research assistantship or a fellowship, you're going to need to do a thesis, right? Or a TA-ship. So how are you supported? Like in regular MS, you're either supported by a TA, right? An RA, or maybe some fellowship. Okay? I can tell you right now, so the TA, that decision is made by the department, but there's encouragement from, let's say, whoever your mentor, your advisor is for your master's thesis. Right now I can tell you that a master's student that's only doing a course-based master's, which you could totally do. You can just do, all of this in courses. Almost none of them ever get a TA. The TA is used primarily to support, let's say, a student trying to do a thesis, right? The problem is TAs very seldomly go to a master's student. It's usually a PhD student. So I'll explain that a little bit later. If you're BSMS, you'll never get a TA. There's actually a rule by the provost himself that says, no BSMS student should have a TA. And I think the rationale is you're already given a break with the double counting, that why should you get more of the school's money to support you for the rest of your master's? They're trying to redistribute, this support across all these students, right? Whatever, But MS students, especially BSMS students, are very attractive for research assistantships. So I mentioned I had 5, 6, 7 MS students. Almost all of them are BSMS. All of them were supported by Lincoln Lab and Raytheon and MITRE and such. I have actually, let me think, how many do I have right now? I have 2 that are supported by MITRE. Both of them are BSMS students. They're done in a year, and they're doing master's theses with me. Theses, that's the word. So, and then fellowships, this is master's students, it's a little bit tricky, but I'm going to write on this board. I think the deadline is coming up at the end of October, around Halloween. So there's something called the National Science Foundation. Graduate Studies, Research, I think that's the name, Fellowship. This is super duper competitive. So otherwise known as GSRF. And what this does, I forgot when the deadline is, but it's probably coming up pretty soon. So what this does is, this is actually, I'll just this in charge. Okay, so what that does is essentially, you become a free agent. I'm not sure how many of you follow hockey, but what happens is, if you go to a professor and say, I'm an MS student, or I'm a graduate student, or I'm a PhD student, I'm self-funded. I have the government. So NSF, National Science Foundation, is a federal organization that focuses on basic research and science in the United States. So they give these fellowships highly competitive, and it supports graduate students for several years in their graduate studies, right? And they do research. So there's an application period. So it's almost like you're applying for a scholarship and such, exact same way. And you apply online. There's a bunch of rules. You need reference letters. I already submitted one for a former student of mine. She's at UMass Amherst right now. And what happens is you submit a proposal what you're going to be doing for your graduate studies if you're given this funding. So this is a very attractive mechanism for supporting yourself. And you don't if you get it, you don't necessarily have to stay at WPI. You can go elsewhere. But nevertheless, you don't have to worry about the financials of your graduate studies. It's very attractive. So in fact, I had something equivalent like that in Canada. So for my master's, I had the province of Quebec. They have something like this. It was called FCAR. I don't know what it meant in French then. They changed the name. I don't know what it's called now. And then afterwards, the federal government, the Canadian government, I had another fellowship to start my PhD program. It was great. My PhD advisor, my master's thesis advisor was like, first of all, the government thinks if they support you, you're obviously capable of doing great work, and you'd probably be a great grad student, and professors like that. And secondly, you don't have to worry about money, right? And the professor doesn't have to worry about money. Like for instance, in my case, like I have like 12 grad students, and that's always on my mind. It's like, is this person being funded, that person being funded, that person being funded? And it's really important because the last thing you want to do is grad school and wondering who's going to cover for this and that, right? So that's a very important thing. In fact, in my lab, I have two the BSMS students who are supported by MITRE. In fact, I have 4 fellowship students, but none of them are NSF. 3 are from Brazil, and 1 is from Turkey, but the equivalent of that. And so I asked them, I said, so you're okay for the next 3-4 years with your PhDs? They say, yeah. The governments of Brazil and Turkey say, and so this is the identical type of program here in the United States. But I believe you have to be a U.S. citizen or a U.S. permanent resident. So that's the trick. There's also, how many people did GREs? GREs? Okay, so there's something called NDSEG, National Defense Science and Engineering Graduate Fellowship, but that requires a GRE. So if you don't have a GRE, it's a non-starter. But the NSF one is not. If you need help with your essays or proposals, drop me an email. I'll put my email address in case anybody else has any other questions. It's very easy. It's not Wyglinski. So it's alexw@wpi.edu. Also be careful if you enter my last name into Outlook and it auto-completes it. You either get me or get my wife. Either way, it gets to the right family, so you're okay that way. But if you have any questions about the NSF GSRF, or you want to show me a draft of your statement or your research proposal, let me know. I'll definitely take a look at it. I think the problem is, I think a lot of folks in WPI are not aware of this program. Okay? And this helps you, if you get this, you literally become a free agent. You can stay at WPI, you can apply to other schools, and they'll say, oh, holy smokes, you have one of those? Please, come, because someone who has that, it's about 10% acceptance rate, which is very tough. Okay, so RA is what folks like myself and other professors get. So it's usually a company or maybe a government lab. They say, we have enough money to support a master's student, maybe a PhD student. Is there anyone that you want to work with? And usually what happens is, the best way, let's say there's a professor that you really like, and let's say they're very active in doing research, and you're interested in their area and such, what you want to do is you want to form a relationship with that professor as soon as possible. In the summer between your junior and senior year, or maybe between sophomore and junior year, you might want to intern with them in their lab, do research with them. You might want to do an independent study project. You might want to do your MQP with them. And get to know that professor well. And what happens is, and I would say 90% of the time, this is what happened in my case. Let's say Lincoln Lab comes over and says, we badly need a US citizen student who's really good in embedded systems and wireless comms in order to do X, Y, Z. And we can make it a thesis if you want. And I say, oh, my MQP student here, this has happened several times before in the past. Or, do you know anybody that does radar? Do you know anybody that does this? And sure enough, it's almost like matchmaking, right? So if, let's say you're interested in doing side channel attacks for whatever, embedded systems, and you were doing stuff with Professor Eisenbart, perfect guy. And he would say, he goes to the company that's asking him this and say, hey, I have this student here. They say, does he have or she have a resume? He shares it. I think this is a great match. And you know why companies do this? Partly it's recruitment. So you have the career fair, but for them it's also like they want to train someone who ultimately would, let's say, be an employee there, and also there's a master's thesis that kind of pushes the envelope in terms of the research in that area. And at the same time, build a relationship with a professor who's also an expert in that area too. So there are a lot of positives with that. And the thing is, companies love WPI students. Companies especially love WPI students who become graduate students, because if you see, most graduate students are like, can anyone solder? But WPI students, it's like, you go to my lab and it's filled with crazy stuff everywhere, right? Like quad rotors, tons of computers connected to software-defined radios, antennas, satellite communications, the works, right? And industry loves WPI students, right? So, MEng, yes?
So for the RA,
Yeah.